We're back. Another episode of the More People podcast. Andrew Fitzmaurice here from More People. My guest in this episode is Jon Poole. Jon, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Jon's known More People and we've known Jon for a long time.
I was trying to work out how long. It's probably about 13, 14 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. And the whole time I've been here, I think, anyway. And these days doing a slightly different role than the one that we've known you for in the past.
Yes.
But for the sake of recapping for people who don't know you, very briefly wanted to touch upon some of the things you've done. So prior to having your leadership and development role, which we'll talk a lot more about, that you have now, you've been Chief Exec of the IFST.
That's right.
Chairman of SALSA.
Yes, still doing that.
Still doing that?
Yep.
Society of Chemical Industry.
Oh, yes, that's going back quite a while.
I was going to go all the way.
Oh, go.
No, I won't. Trustee of the Science Council.
Yes, done that.
And then some other things.
Yes.
But
which
a lot
remain nameless.
Which remain nameless. But a lot of food science and industry in there as well.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, you mentioned the Society of Chemical Industry, but even then it was around the issues around agriculture, and also where I first met your illustrious leader, Guy Morton, and then your good self.
Yeah, so yeah, lots of collaboration with the IFST.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key link there is that those bodies are interested in supporting people in their professional development. And a key element of that is about how we bring on young talent. And I guess there's a link there where more people have been really good and supportive of the stuff we've been doing, particularly at IFST, the Institute of Food Science and Technology, to bring young talent into the sector, which everyone knows remains, all the time I've been involved in the food sector has remained a key issue.
We're banging the drum and trying to solve the same problems.
Good.
It feels like we've been trying to solve for a long time, but
Indeed.
it's an ever-present issue, I think, to bring that next level in. And there's a lot of advocacy for things like, well, all trade bodies generally, they're very well-meaning and a lot of support from industry, but to what degree they can become intrinsically important and do their part for particularly young people. The IFSC has always done a really good job and continues to do so.
Indeed.
So you have a new hat to wear now.
I do. New hat.
New hat. So what's your new hat?
Well, it isn't that new actually, because I've been running my consultancy, which is around leadership development and management development and organisational development more widely for around about 25 years. But I've been doing it in the background up until now, and now that's become my sole focus. So a lot of work with organisations to help them bring on the people within their organisations, helping them to develop management skills within their businesses, and again leadership skills. And here's the key link, how they can grow and develop their people from within to be their future leaders.
So the problems just evolve. So once you nail the problem of bringing new people into the industry, it's then incumbent on those companies to nurture, develop and grow future talent, future leaders.
Yeah, you may think that to talk about the growth of people and retaining good talent within a business might be a little bit against the purpose, if you like, of a recruitment organisation, but just as important to, if you like, put the plug in the bath so that you're not the water's not just coming in, but it's filling the bath, and that's through good retention, giving a lot of attention to people and growing from within. So it's not about me coming in training people to be good managers, but how businesses can actually nurture their talent themselves, and we do that through giving them coaching skills, so they as managers can be internal coaches to develop people long after step change development has left their building.
Again, in this forum, you hear a lot about the leaky bucket of trying to grow a business where you're constantly replenishing people that leave.
Yes.
And depending on how cynical the person actually might be about training, you've got the issue of if you don't train your people and they stay, or you train them really well and they might leave. But I'd rather have a well-trained workforce who had more mobility elsewhere and were better while we had them than a reluctance to train people, which means you've got a substandard team.
I can never understand that. I hear it quite often on my training courses where managers say, oh, we don't want to develop our people because they'll only become more marketable and leave. And you go, how can that be? Would you prefer to have a group of disgruntled, incapable people working for you, or would you prefer those people to grow and develop? And what you tend to find is people go, actually, I like it around here because I'm looked after, and people are giving me attention and growing me. And paradoxically, then they don't leave because they're working in a really positive climate in the organisation. So yeah.
Well, people, I think, prioritize different elements of work, don't they? It's not all about money for everybody. Money helps.
Yeah.
Lots of people are motivated by money and promotions and bigger roles and bigger basic salaries and bigger bonuses. But a lot of people want to feel invested in. And if you're not, then you might move elsewhere, not for monetary reasons, but for a lack of development.
Absolutely. I'm not getting any attention, so I'll move elsewhere where I can. So yeah, it's just as important.
One of the issues we sometimes find, and I know it's the same for our clients, is trying to understand the difference between leadership or leadership training, management, and coaching.
Yes.
And they can be quite different skills and quite different elements that are required for different reasons.
Yeah.
What's your approach?
I was fearing you were going to ask that question. There's the difference between management and leading. I think there's always a grey area in the middle. But for me, management is a functional thing, and therefore it's about doing all the stuff that you have to do as a manager. It's more mechanical. It's about checking, doing payroll. It's about holidays and doing appraisals and all of those sort of more mechanical things. Leadership for me is that bigger picture piece where you're motivating, you're providing the vision, you're encouraging people, and you are leading them. Now, the tricky one of that is, where does coaching fit into that?
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, we run a coaching skills workshop, which is unusual, but it's to train managers to be coaches within their organizations. Some people feel that what they're being trained to do is to do this separate thing of coaching. For me, actually, where it works really well is where people are being coached through the natural conversations that they're actually having with people. So when they're having a one-to-one at the at the beginning of the week or at the end of the week, it isn't we're going to do some coaching now, but the conversations and the techniques and the questions that the manager uses are coaching-based questions which draw out and provide responsibility to the individual. So not a simple answer, but I think you can distinguish more between leadership and management. But coaching at its best is not a discrete thing. It's part of being a good leader and part of being a good manager.
Yeah, it transcends all of those different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So does someone need to be in the right space? We talk about situational leadership from time to time.
Yeah,
you think about directing, you think about delegating, coaching. It has to be the right conditions for someone to be open-minded to coaching, or they need to know enough about the subject matter themselves, so they're not in a directing quadrant, as it were, or can anyone be coached at all times?
No, there's nothing worse than sort of meeting up with somebody for a coaching session. I obviously coach people from various organisations. There's nothing worse than meeting somebody who's reluctantly there because they're being told to do it, and they may not even know why they're being coached. What you want is somebody who we call it on receive. They are an active participant. They have the willingness, they have the appetite, the drive to want to further themselves. One of the other things, I suppose, which is worth also pointing out, is that coaching isn't about just correcting poor performance. If you're an elite athlete, you don't even get a coach until you're at the top of your game. So I think some managers think, oh, I'm meant to be coaching this person because they're underperforming. But I would argue that actually it's better to tweak another 5% of the best elements of somebody's performance, rather than sort of flogging away at trying to improve 40% of one of their poor elements of their performance. So for that reason, it's great to be coaching people who are already at the top of their game, but making them even better, or keeping them at the top of their game longer.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of people will see the parallels and the pitfalls in their businesses with that analogy.
Yeah.
Are there a certain set of predisposed traits, personality traits that make a good coach, or can it all be learned?
I guess there are people who are more predisposed to it, in the sense that you need to be someone who is attuned, what we call interpersonal awareness. They are attuned to the individual, so that they're thinking about, they're empathetic in the way that they come across. They're analysing the individual, so that if somebody says, yeah, that's fine, are they taking the intonation of how they're saying it? Or are they just taking it at face value? It is possible to learn some of those things and develop them, because part of coaching is about developing people's behaviours. But yeah, it does help to have that. But we find that on our training courses, we have a whole mixture of managers from all sorts of backgrounds. Some of them are, well versed, and they're training managers or training directors. But we also have others who it's their first sort of foray into coaching. And we can progress them a long way in terms of both skills, techniques, and helping to develop those behaviours as well.
So a two-part question. So to what extent is it useful when you start one of these sessions to be reasonably self-aware, to know oneself and one's predispositions, patience levels of IQ, levels of empathy?
Yeah.
To what extent is it important to know where you're starting from, so
Yeah.
you know where you need to flex? And the second part question is, do you do stuff with personality profiling to help identify some of those predispositions and traits?
Yeah, I mean, when we start coaching somebody, it really helps to be able to use some form of psychometric assessment, because that helps create a ground under which, a strong foundation for the individual to better know themselves. I mean, one of the key elements, I think, of leadership generally is to be true to yourself, to be the authentic leader. I know those sound very sort of glib and nice, warm and woolly words, but that's true. People see through people who are being false as leaders. So how can you be your authentic self if you don't know who you are?
Yeah.
And some of the stuff around particularly traits, predispositions, and some behaviors and even values are quite well hidden. People don't really sort of know those. Now, some people I will question and say, have you been through any of these psychometrics? But most often people that will have done so in the context of a selection process. And as you can imagine, that's a slightly different scenario to going through a psychometric where it's for your own personal growth.
You're not projecting the version you want to be, or being a bit more honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And that honesty, that authenticity is really important. So actually do a completely different psychometric assessment purely for the benefit of the understanding yourself properly.
Well, it's not unlike what you were saying with coaching in general. You're better off inflating the top end of your positive traits, as opposed to killing yourself to work on the ones that are not naturally yourself, so that you are more authentic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've got a training session coming up here, have we?
We have, yeah, which is, so thank you to MorePeople for hosting what we call a coaching taster day. That gives you, in around about a 3-hour taster, all of the essentials around the coaching skills. So at least whet your appetite, but probably also give you enough to start becoming a coach within your organisation.
Fantastic. Well, there'll be details on the website and on newsletters, I'm sure, so people can follow up on those.
Absolutely.
One question we're asking all of our guests, as a twee way to finish, this being our 24th year in business, is if you could give yourself one piece of advice back to your 24-year-old self based on what you know now, what piece of advice would that be?
What I would say to myself is brace yourself, because I started my working life in financial services, and now I've ended up working in scientific professional bodies in the food industry. I wouldn't change any of it for the world, because they've been all exciting and interesting times. Of course, there are times where it's, there's frustration, but I wouldn't change any of it. So yeah, my advice is buckle up for the ride and brace yourself and enjoy it, I guess.
Yeah, you never know where it might take you.
No, exactly. No, there may be another one to come yet.
Who knows? For us both.